Hello, people. Welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. It's me, your friendly host, Justin Joulander, and here with me, Rob Stone. How's it going, man?
It's awesome. Just got back the other night, and ready to chat through it. And we are joined tonight by my humble companion on the trip, Mr. Aspen Mahan.
Hello to all.
An old favorite on the podcast for sure. Glad to have you back and talking about another trip.
Yeah, always good to be here.
Yeah. So I'm glad to have you. Tonight we're going to be kind of talking about your trip a bit and getting into that of it, and then maybe talking if we have time, but get a little fight in there about group sizes, because you guys just had a fairly small group. nice cozy group. But how's stuff going? You miss any clutches while you were away, or you had some hatchlings, didn't you?
I missed something. I definitely missed something.
Yeah.
I'd had some scrub eggs in the incubator, and before I left, I was looking at them. They're getting all dimpled in and starting to breathe heavy. And I thought, just hold off for 4 days. You can hold off. Don't hatch. And sure enough, a day after we left, they started poking their heads out.
Of course. Did they at least have the decency to wait for you to get back before they made their full way out?
One did.
Okay.
One did.
That'll be your favorite. That'll be your holdback, I'm sure.
He unfortunately didn't make it.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, well, he had some pretty bad deformities. That was keeping him in the egg.
Okay. Yeah.
But,
I guess there's usually a reason if they take too long.
Yeah,
so
it was 3 or 4 days in there. Yeah.
So how many did you get?
7 out of the 8. So
nice.
Pretty good. Yeah.
And do you want to tell what species they are? Or are you holding that?
They're sarongs.
Sarong scrubs.
They're sarong scrubs. Yep. And I'm definitely holding on to them. We'll see what they turn into.
Yeah. Very cool. Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Well,
that's exciting. You got those right before our Australia trip. So
yes, they landed about not that long before.
Yeah,
I guess they landed a little while before. Yeah, it was pretty close though.
Yeah. Well, that means my black-headed python eggs should be hatching soon, because they got laid during the trip. So I think I'm about a week or maybe 2 behind you. So they're starting to dent in, and they still look okay. So hopefully, I kind of felt them today, and they felt like they were getting a little, weaker, like the kind of feel they get.
You get the little squishy feel to them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So hopefully they're going to hatch. And man, I'm up to 11 clutches that I've caught. I think I had one clutch where she didn't wrap them. It was a pygmy python, unfortunately, but she just spread them around the cage, and so that was kind of a bummer. And then that California King laid again. I bred her this year. And I didn't think she was gravid, and all of a sudden I'm like, what is that? Because I fed her a couple nights ago, and I'm looking in the cage. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's desiccated eggs. Awesome. So it's kind of a bummer.
That's now she's caught you off guard, isn't it?
Well, no, I was ready for the first clutch.
Okay.
I saw she was pretty thick, and I'm like, oh, is she gravid? So I put it in a nest box, but this time she didn't look that gravid, and so I didn't put in the nest box. I should have just kept it in there. I thought about it, like, should I just put it in? Because I did pair her this spring, but stupid,
You just got to trust the natives that they're going to abide.
Exactly. So. Yeah. This year is like a lot of stuff, so I'm not too, sad that I maybe missed a clutch or two, but 11 clutches, and I'm kind of a small scale breeder anyway, so this is gonna push the limits a little bit. So all the 4 Antaresia now. I got children's eggs and spotted eggs, and then both Eastern and Western Stimsons, as well as 2 localities of Western Stimsons. And these are like 3rd generation captive bred Western Stims. So like wee belts and brooms, and they should be really nice. I'm excited. It's kind of my striped line of wheat belts. They're kind of cool looking. So I'm excited to see what comes out of this clutch. And then it was a first time female. She laid a pretty good clutch. And then
nice.
A stellar holdback Eastern Stim that's just gorgeous. She laid. So that should be cool. And still waiting on a Woma clutch, and she's getting bigger and bigger. I thought she would have laid by now, so I'm a I'm hoping that there's no complications, but yeah, she's looking big. And then, but I mean, she just shed a couple weeks ago, so she's still got a little bit of time. And then I think I have another pygmy that's going to lay as well. So could be 13, maybe 14 clutches, which is way too many for me. So help me out.
A third of the
buy
way
some
to
snakes.
Owen.
Yeah, exactly. Is that how many he's got?
He's up to trying for something like that.
Yeah, about 40 clutches in his. Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah, it should be a fun year though. Lots of good stuff. Got a clutch of inlands last week, and that was exciting. Can't be too mad about an inland clutch. I think we talked about it, but where she wrapped around the other female and not around the eggs, and I caught them closely, soon after she laid them, so that was good. But it's like, what are you doing? So anyway, all right. How about you guys? You got anything exciting going on with your collections, or is it mainly just aside from the scrubs, of course? But are we ready
outside of the scrubs? Most everything's pretty calm over here. Still got some baby king rats. Trying to decide if I want to hang on to those or let them go. Outside of that, not much is happening.
Big angry snakes for Aspen.
Yeah, that's there's a theme there.
Found a theme.
Yeah. I guess I shouldn't talk out of turn. I don't know much about king rats, and I've never kept scrubs. So
you about nailed it. Big angry snakes.
I guess that's kind of the public image they have, but you never know. Maybe there's some sweethearts out there. Yeah.
Sweetheart stinking goddesses,
Yeah,
that's
there
right.
you go. Yeah. I don't know which I'd prefer, a bite or a squeeze from one of those. But.
They're both about as fun as you think.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. Very cool snakes for sure. That's cool. All right. Well, we dive in then. You guys ready to
let's do it.
talk about the trip a bit? Okay. I'll turn it over to you guys. So you were in northern Florida?
Central and northern Florida. Yeah. And really the ideation, at least on my end, for the trip was to try and see one of the main targets on the last trip, which was October of 23, was a Simus, a southern hognose snake. And generally speaking, people talk about them in the context of going in October. And that,
October.
Right, October, but it's in the context of babies emerging is basically the idea there, where they're hatching between the end of September and the first and second week of October. And so there are a lot of, as Bob Zappalordi said, all the little dum-dums are up and, trying to figure out what's going on. So, that's sort of the Hogtober thing. And I thought, well, pretty clearly, right, that's not the only seasonality. It just, again, in sort of the construct of the Herper ideas, saying, okay, do we want to follow the idea, or is there a natural corollary to that idea that maybe makes more sense and doesn't have quite as much pressure and incentive around it? Additionally, I guess one challenge associated just sort of with the way it's presented is that most Simus are road cruised. And as you know, road cruising isn't necessarily my favorite, all that much more so when we're talking about dirt roads. Which is sort of the primary habitat type, or at least, that's what's in the habitat, surrounding the habitat that they exist in. So I thought I'd have a better chance of hiking up an adult in the emergence, leading into the season. So that was basically the ideation for the trip. And then it was, it's not all that far to try and hit a canebrake. It's not the easiest spot to find them, right? It's the far southern extent. When you're far north, you're at the far southern extent of their range. There are certainly other places where maybe even they look prettier. They're certainly easier to find, those sorts of things. But it was really a Simus trip from my perspective, plus canebrakes, plus then basically it really reminds me of the Pine Barrens, where within that sandhill habitat, everything is relatively difficult. Which makes everything special, right? So all the things are cool. Be it pine snakes, short-tail snakes, eastern diamondbacks. So all these really cool snakes that are out there. So densities are low. We got lucky with the weather, though, compared to the one we had gone in October of 23. so yeah, I'd invited the usual cast and crew, yourself included. Yep. And maybe this will come to the sort of the fight topic at some point, is invited folks, and everyone's sort of mixed levels of interest, availability, all those things, which always makes sense, right? Yeah. Then, everyone's telling me no or maybe, and I was like, I'd like to go with his Aspen. And so I had reached out to him, and fortunately, he was super game right away. So I really appreciated that. And apparently, he'd actually put the kibosh himself on going to the Pine Barrens to go fishing with Keith and Lindsay and Chris and all this stuff to be able to go. But I'll leave that to him. So anyway, that's sort of the genesis of it from my perspective, was saying, hey, I want to go find a Simus canebrake if we can. And then all the other stuff there is cool, but trying to do it on the opposite seasonality from when most folks are going out, so you're not kind of facing that additional struggle, and it seemed to make more sense relative to hiking something up. So
sure, cool, yeah. So where'd you guys meet up, or when?
So we both flew out individually. Rob obviously from Colorado, and I from Utah, and we met up there in the airport in Orlando.
Okay,
and pretty much hit the ground running. From taking that early morning flight, how these herp trips usually go. You land and you crush a Monster or Red Bull, and then you hit the road. Yeah, it's a bit of a hoof to get up to that area from the airport. So we had some driving to do. Kind of like Rob said, luckily he invited me, and pretty much everything that was on his list was still on my list to see. I've done that area 2 other times now. And kind of missed all those big targets, like Rob was saying. Missed Simus, missed Pines, missed all the good stuff. So,
what number trip is this for you to Florida?
This is my 3rd Florida trip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 3rd.
Yeah,
Florida
you've had
trip.
some pretty successful trips out there too, right?
I've been very lucky in catching the right season, the right weather, and the right place at the right time. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, though your trips have always impressed me, because my Florida experience, I guess I've been 3 times too, but one of them was to a very specific place, specifically for Eastern Diamondbacks so that was sort of the intermediate trip, February of last year. So that was a quick one with Owen. You had another small group one. That was just Owen and I, and then we met some locals, turned it up, and so that was good. But Aspen's trips to Florida always impressed me, just with this breadth of species and the quantities that he's turning up and all these things. Whereas my Florida experience has been, I'm finding the thing, and save for racers, I find the thing and nothing else. So.
I think generally I tend to take the shotgun approach, where you shoot the whole spread, and you spend a day here or 2 days here, and then you jump and move to the next spot, which can work really good when you're going for numbers or you really want to cover the whole area. But kind of like Rob pointed to, is you don't have a lot of time when you really want to hit that main target. So this was, I think, probably one of my first trips where it was like just one focused spot for the most part.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
Cool. So. All right. Well, let's hear about it.
Well, and I would say to that too, right, Justin, you and I have talked through that because we have our own preferences on there. So maybe the stuff that Aspen has more generally done aligns with sort of your grand voyages from my perspective. So.
Well, with that said, our last Utah trip covered a lot of ground too, because we started in Moab area, went down to Grand Canyon.
We started in Vegas,
and then
came down.
That's
went
true.
Went to the Grand Canyon, went back to Vegas.
The giant loop. So I think you've had a few of those as well.
Oh sure. Well, it's not. Even when we went to Queensland in 23, 22. Yeah, it was the same sort of deal, right? We flew into Brisbane and then went all the way up to Byfield and that sort of stuff. So. Yeah, that was the same. I think I drove 10 hours or whatever, but it was kind of, okay, you go as far as you're going and then you work your way back. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely good to both styles for sure. But so the concentrated trip this time, picked a certain area and
yeah, like 2 certain areas. Yeah, and that was basically it.
And were you going back to like the same spots, same hikes, or was it pretty much?
Yeah, so both of the spots, and Aspen, you can detail more from where it fit into your trip. But yeah, certainly the 2 spots that were kind of the concentrations were places that we had gone in on our first trip in October 23.
Okay. And just known for the target species you were after. So
yeah, I mean, it's the sandhill habitat, so it's the high points of sort of ancestral Florida, basically. Yeah. Yeah, you would recognize it relative to New Jersey stuff that we've done. It feels very similar. Obviously, there's the saw palmetto is a different addition to the assemblage, but other than that, you would just say, "Oh, okay, yeah, this feels very similar."
All the way up to the ticks.
I was just going to ask because
the triggers and ticks. So I think that can be the little sideshow for. I think. I was seeing with different species at the different places. Right. I definitely one place wound up being heavy chiggers, which is exciting. We can go back into what that means. And the other was heavy tick. So
you still itching?
Oh yes, certainly.
There's some rashes.
Yeah. Has anybody tried bug spray yet?
I personally
better than I did.
Yeah, I personally after my first tick experience in the East Coast area, I immediately went out and bought permethrin. And this is a whole other Fight Club topic, but chemicals versus non-chemicals. Personally, I'm open to chemicals if it means I don't have to dig ticks out of crevices I didn't know I had. And it works quite well.
Okay. So you just put it on your ankles and boots and pants, or you rub it in your crack and stuff?
You'll treat your clothes. So you spray it on your clothes, let them dry out, and then your clothes stay treated for, I think it's supposed to be like 60 washes. And they'll just fall right off of you. I mean, every once in a while I'd find one crawling on me, but every night I didn't find any on my skin.
Nice.
So
did it work for the chiggers as well?
Around my ankles they got in, but everything else was okay.
Okay. So no DEET or anything around the ankles? Nothing like that?
I
think we're going to have to try that in Pennsylvania. I just really don't want to be scratching my feet and ankles for the next month or 2 afterwards. So,
Well, I'll still be scratching from now when I see you. So
what's a few more bites, right?
Yeah, what's a few more for fun?
Yeah. Well, in New Zealand, they talk about the sand fleas, and they're kind of like chiggers, or like, well, I guess they're larger, but they'll bite you and fly away and stuff. But yeah, those were miserable, itchy bites. But they say if you get like 1,000 or 10,000 sand flea bites, then it doesn't affect you anymore. So I'm wondering if there's something with that with chiggers as well.
I think you're just numb at that point.
But like locals don't really have that reaction to the sand flea bites like tourists do. So I don't know if that's true or not. You just see, like, I just saw some poster on a wall in a shop and I'm like, I wonder if that's true. Maybe like this guy that's injecting himself with all the snake venoms that's been on the news lately. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. All right, so ticks and chiggers aplenty, and how about the herps?
So the first day we went to North Florida, I'd call it, and a spot that we've been before, cruised for a bit, which is sort of what, as I say, the paradigm of Florida, it's interesting, is really seemingly the culture is road cruising. That's very strongly the culture. And I suppose that makes some sense, right? It's hot and humid and those sorts of things, even on these days that weren't all that terrible. I mean, we were talking on our high points were in the mid 80s, maybe upper 80s, something like that. But at that humidity, it's sort of interesting, right? Because we're all mountain state folk, that it can be much cooler, ambient, particularly shade temperature. But the sun being so much closer makes a profound impact. So we'll feel that heat, but we don't have the humidity. So the relative combination of that temperature with the high relative humidity,
right?
Apparently what our buddy KJ, who's down there, said that he basically is willing to hike between October and the end of February or something like that.
End of winter.
Otherwise, it's just too miserable.
Yeah, it just sort of like, and honestly, for me, I didn't find it to be that bad. But as you guys know, I don't mind. Expect to come out of the day sort of wore out and soaked. So,
how about the flying, like the mosquitoes and the other annoying flying insects?
Those weren't bad compared to in October. It seemed like on that first trip in October, and then when I went with Owen in February, I think it's just spots and how much standing water there is makes a big difference, and how close you are to that, right? And so the sandhill stuff is there's water around, but it's not on water. Save we did go look for Nerodia. Surprisingly, the curse of you can't find what should be common came through. And there definitely were more. We can get to that. But other than that, you're not that near to water. So we saw some, but I probably maybe had 2 or 3 bites the whole time, and we weren't running the what was the thing that Phil had got? The
disc thing that pushes out
the little packet.
What is that called? I have that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't bring it and didn't use it, and there was no time where I thought, man, I should have done that. So I think I don't think it's that they're not out now. I think it must be that what we were looking for isn't right by water, so we weren't seeing it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Day 1.
Go ahead, Aspen.
Yeah, day 1. So we go to that spot and we pretty much hit it hard. We started running, and it's surprising to me, like Rob said, being desert or mountain people, we're used to ideal conditions in our mind. Mid 80s, early afternoon, you just had a little bit of rain. It should be phenomenal. And we were not turning much up. We were looking in all the right spots. I feel like we put in the miles, that's for sure, on that day.
You always do with Rob.
I don't know. You can't. I don't know if you have room to talk.
Yeah, you always do with me too.
By the time we got back to the car, that at the end of that day, maybe it was just the jet lag, but I think we were both feeling it. My ankles, my hips were all locked up with not a lot to show for it, unfortunately, on that first day.
Right. You turn up anything? You see
some cool bugs.
Okay.
And I think so. There were sort of the ubiquitous fence lizards, 6-lined race runners. So we're seeing some, which again just sort of promoted the, where are the snakes? We're not missing these. Also, a ton of as Aspen was saying, the bugs. There were really cool caterpillars that he had then keyed out. One of them, caterpillar, the echo moth. Very brightly colored, red, long sort of spikes, all this stuff. Cool. Seemingly, you can actually pick them up or whatever. If you're sensitive, if you're super sensitive, then maybe it'll irritate your skin a little bit. But they're actually not bad. But they have this aposematic coloration for sure. And they're just scooting about. Obviously, they think it works because or it must work because they're just all over the place.
Chomped.
And it fit in that box though of saying, okay, well, this is giving us the feedback that we're seeing these things. So I don't think we're, just in that space of that we see with the peds in West Texas, right? Where it's like, well, I'm not missing a 3-foot snake if I'm seeing a 2-inch caterpillar. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, unless they're brightly colored and they stand out like a sore thumb, maybe.
Well, that was these echo moths. I don't know if it's just coincidence, but they were very similar pattern to what you would expect a coral snake. They had that red, yellow, black rings. I don't know if it's a mimicry thing or if it's just coincidence, but we saw quite a few of them, like Rob was saying.
Nice.
Between those, the fence lizards, and the anoles, they kind of kept us entertained, but we were kind of hoping for more on that first day. Sure. That evening we went out cruising. I'm right with Rob on I prefer to walk stuff up, but if I have to cruise it, then I will. So we went out road cruising for cane breaks.
Okay. And
same thing. It felt really good. Temps held for a good while after dark. And we cruised that late evening into late evening, early evening into late evening. And we got 2 ribbons and some southern toads. And we kept stopping for every stupid rock and knob in the road thinking this is one. That was something, right?
You're not seeing it.
And it never was.
It creates the impression of, okay, it's something wrong with my search image. Right. So everything is then seemingly a snake as opposed to, when you see something, then you're like, and sort of the way that happens viscerally, say like, oh, I recognize that as a snake instantly.
Yeah.
There's just not something that it's not that you're not seeing it. It's just not there
just
to
not
see.
out. Yeah. Yep. I know
that was definitely a common theme for our road cruising.
Yeah.
In
we
general,
stopped for a lot of the same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you wind up covering a lot of the same areas sort of repetitively. It's like, wow, that's the sixth time that I've been fooled by that, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes you then, okay, I actually have to move it this time just so that to put an end to this.
Right. Same thing in the West Max. We kept like stopping for the same thing. It's like, oh, that's that grass clump again. And there's that stick in the road. Yeah. Know how that goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. One other fun bit is that associated with this. So again, it's dirt cruising. So I'd gone for the sort of light pickup was the idea, 4-wheel drive, but light pickup. So we had gone to the rental spot and say, no worries or whatever. Okay, pick it up in spot XYZ. And we go out there, and this is all in the Orlando parking garages, which are very tight spaces.
Right.
And I expected to see something like Nissan Frontier, something like that. Yeah. So this, real light, like a Tacoma, right? The Tundra is the big one. The Tacoma is the small one. That was what I was sort of something in that vein. And they had decided that no, what we have available is a Dodge Ram Bighorn 2500.
Oh God.
It was a monster. The last thing you want.
Yeah.
For that to get out of the parking spots within the tight confine, that rental car, they're maximizing space. Those spaces are so small that this thing like legitimately fills to the lines on both sides of the parking space. And I'm like,
cars as you go out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get out. So I get it. I sprung for the comprehensive just to not get into it. Yeah. But as is sort of always my want, it's like, okay, I don't want to be arguing. We saw it with Phil, right, when we gone to West Texas with he and Smitty in 21, I think, there. June 21. Yeah. And he wound up fighting him about one ding for like 6 months. I'm like, okay, I'll pay the money just to not be having this conversation. That being said, I still didn't want to like smash into another car in the parking garage. I was like, Aspen, you got to get out and just tell me like if I can, am I good? Am I not good? What's going on?
Yeah.
I think I had to. Yeah, I'm Austin Powersing it just to get the car out of there.
Yeah. That's funny. So how was it cruising in that monster?
It turns like the Titanic.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to flip around. And
there was no turning. You just reversed.
You had to back up. That was you were going one direction or the other. There was no circulation to the movement at all.
Oh man, that's rough. As long as the backup camera is pretty good, you're all right.
It was
when it's not covered in dust, it's
right. Good, yeah, that's the hard thing is you start reversing, you're reversing into a cloud of dust a lot of times. So, yep. Well, hopefully Aspen ran back
or whatever. Yeah.
So
we did have one of those actually where we passed it, but we'll get there. But yeah.
All right.
So day 2 we went back to that same spot. Confidence in the ideation, right? We've been through that before of like, okay, do you stick with what you're doing or do you lose the faith or whatever? But no, it was like this is the place, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Went back there, got there early in the morning. Cruised for a pass or two, and then it was like, okay, let's, we got to hike this out. And then as we're doing that, Aspen and I are working through this stuff, and I'm like, man, I don't want to. And it was the weekend, so there's a ton of activity going on that road, that there probably isn't during the week. And it was like, I don't want to find something hit. That's right. Even worse, right? We've done it. We've done passes. We know it's clean. So if anything's dead, coming off the backside of this, we'll know there'll be some of that. If I'd kept going, or if we'd been out there cruising, then maybe that's the difference. So I said, Aspen, you keep walking. I'm going to go cruise this for an hour and see what's going on. Did that, and to no effect. Beyond stopping for the same grass clumps and the same pieces of cord and all of that. But Aspen did turn up, hike up a snake. Then shortly after I'd come back, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, you'd just gotten back. you'd just gotten back from passing through, and neither of us had seen anything at this point. And I think Rob got a call from his wife. So he was talking to his wife for a minute, and I walked maybe 30, 40 yards in a different direction. And I'd been flipping logs, hoping to find a coral or something under one of these logs. And I go to flip the next log, and you know how your brain sees something before your eyes see it.
Right.
And my brain's like, hold up, don't flip that log. And of course, there's a little pygmy rattlesnake coiled up, just sitting right on top of that log. So I called over to Rob, hey, got a pygmy, come over, and we photographed that for a little bit. So that was what we took as a good indicator, because we'd just seen a good rainstorm come through the night before.
Right.
And he was sitting like he was in a rain collecting position or possibly ambush. But the fact that he was out was what I would have called a good sign.
For sure.
So we were kind of pumped. We're like, all right, it's going to be good now.
Mm-hmm. And you both seen those before?
Seen them, but I've never hiked one up. So that was a new thing for me.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was awesome, and Aspen's, and that was kind of seated in the shade or partial shade, and that's
it was in pretty dappled light.
Mm-hmm. Very
so
cool.
we took some photos of that, yeah, and then you go.
That was kind of what we were expecting to see in my mind when I think of a hognose in that kind of patchy forest sandhill area. I expect to see them on the crawl in leaf litter in a dappled light, in those little groves.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was primarily focusing on. But at the same time, we're looking for pines. So I'm kind of walking in the open area, checking every tortoise burrow. Maybe there's a snake track. I can follow it. We saw a couple of tortoises.
Nice.
No, we didn't actually see. Very few. We didn't see many in that area, actually. Now I think about that's what we were confused about, is we couldn't figure out why we weren't seeing tortoises.
Mm-hmm. And this is a protected area where you'd expect to see them pretty common. And you saw, it sounds like a bunch of burrows and
tons of burrows.
Okay.
And burrows with activity, but no tortoises.
Just not out. Just not
out
doing their thing.
Which was very strange, because it felt like, well, and part of it, right, is maybe the discrepancy in habitat type between the Utah stuff. What we were thinking was, okay, we're in this space where they have so many good days that I guess they can deem this to be moderate to mediocre, mediocre to poor or whatever, even though it seems great.
Yeah.
But then I would say that we were in basically functionally the same conditions when we come a bit further south on the back half of the trip, and the tortoises were all out and all over the place. So it made it even more confusing for me of saying, why weren't those tortoises out those first couple days?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've been discussing all this, and this area is quite large. It's a large area of land. So we kind of split up and did the tag team thing. You cover this area, I'll cover this area. And it was probably 2:30 in the afternoon. I get a phone call from Rob. And he's kind of got this quiet, calm voice, and he goes, hey, I'm going to send you a pin. I just need you to come to me. I said, okay, and hang up. And I thought in my mind, either he's just snapped his leg in half and is trying to remain calm, or he found a target. So he sends me this picture of the map, and his maps are slightly different from mine. He orientates his north to south, and the photo of the map was slightly off from what I was using. So I'm looking at this dot where he's looking at, and I ran like 3/4 of a mile in the wrong direction.
No.
But I'm trying to get my way back to. You'd think I know how to read a map, but clearly I cannot. And finally, I find him and get to him, and I'll let him carry on from here.
Yeah, so I had tried to send him a picture of what it was that I was looking at, and then, of course, just to be in the context, to amplify the, uncertainty, it didn't go through, or it didn't go through for a while. So before he'd gotten to me, you did get to see what it was, which was, and exactly to the point that Aspen was making in terms of relative to search image, right? And we talked about this a lot with Willard Eye, right? Of saying like, okay, are these super montane? I know then there's sort of in the Canelo Hills, it's sort of a different presentation than other places. They are other places and whatever, but like when you found the first two, right, that we're sitting there going like, oh, well, yeah, they blend with what this looks like, right? As opposed to sitting in some sort of Madrian evergreen habitat or something like that. Right. So in this same way, I'd just been so I'd gone a long way to a spot that I'd liked. I had failed. I had taken Aspen the day before on sort of a death march, trying to find a particular spot where, when I went with Eric and Nipper and Phil, I had seen what I guess they're pocket gopher burrows. So these sort of you get these piles that are them having displaced the dirt, sand, whatever. And I thought it was near to a piece of structure. And then I couldn't even find the structure. None of this was sort of where I thought it would be. Meanwhile, we're putting in, certainly extra Ks, if not miles, for me trying to figure it out based on the map and all this stuff, all the while seeing nothing, getting roasted out and all this stuff. So it was, and walking on super loose sand, which is always fun.
Right.
But I was insistent. I was going to go look. I wasn't going to bring him because I didn't want to feel that much worse about it. When you're trying and failing to find what you have in your mind, it's all that much worse when you're putting someone else
suffering.
Yeah. So it's like, instead of just, well, if it's just you're just trying to make it work. So, so I was off doing that, and then it had come to the point, as is so often the case, of like, functionally, let's call it, at least for today, it wasn't going to be a total kill on that spot. If the answer had been that we failed, hey, we'll try for the morning. But I was actually emotionally preparing myself for writing this off, saying, well, I guess, Simon, this isn't going to happen this trip. We're going to, here we go again, got to spin the wheel and do it. I think we're in the right place.
Right.
But came through a very little stand of sort of old habitat, and not necessarily even sort of longleaf pine, right? It was other assemblage that then produces a lot of leaf litter. And, I'm just intending to bust through, and I take 2 steps in, and it's stuck, despite blending in perfectly with that leaf litter. So the southern hognose back coloration, certainly, that's what it's, that's what it's doing.
Nice.
Despite that, it was a note outer, and there it is, right there. Just
That's awesome.
I'd sort of written it off, It was probably a 2-foot female, certainly not gravid at this point. Probably so it was in good condition, but probably tough to say, right? Whether they would reproduce, had enough reserves to reproduce this year, or if they're sort of biannual in that context or not.
Right.
But I mean, good looking, but not, you wouldn't look at it and say like, oh, that thing's sitting on huge follicles or whatever, which it might be in the sort of, if it was going to go this year.
Right. Oh, very cool. That's awesome. So target acquired and celebrations all around, and
all
that's
fist
cool.
bumps and high fives.
By the time Aspen made it,
By the time Aspen made it. So, which actually, good news, bad news is that, fortunately, given the constraints or lack thereof in the habitat, it froze. It actually did things sort of that rough green snakes can do too, where when it first saw me, it moved, it sort of inched forward an inch, did the forward and back sort of movement.
The chameleon.
2 or 3 times. Yeah, exactly right. It did that, and then it stopped moving because I both wasn't coming closer, and it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay solid here. And so then I proceeded to lay down in the leaf litter and just stare at it for 10 minutes, cool. From 2 feet away. So, that was really, really cool. As I say, especially coming off the effort that had gone into it, and the sort of, I think for the most part, people don't find them this way. Right. And that's not to say they can't, but just sort of with the way that they're doing it, that it was like, really trying to take time to enjoy it. I took some photos, I took
plenty of
the immediate voucher shot to send them, and then, you're playing with it with the camera, but also simultaneously just sort of trying to take that message of enjoying the moment as opposed to recording what then Aspen and I retroactively heard. So we listened to Nick and Ryan talking about their trip, right? And Nick in prototype fashion was talking about people recording stuff that they're never going recording so that they'll never watch, but they're all watching it through this mediated lens of the camera and all this stuff that, trying to really be fully present. And,
right.
Yeah. So it was awesome. And then, kind of after I'd had all this time to process it, Aspen knows what is coming and, gets over, and it's like, then we get the high fives, and then Yeah, it was really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Part that stings for me is I had walked this exact stand maybe an hour before, kind of bobbing and weaving inside of it, and worked my way to another edge of this area.
Yeah.
And obviously I completely missed it or hadn't crossed, that section yet. But it's like I was just
right place,
here.
wrong time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And were you taking which approach were you taking? I mean, Rob, were you hustling through, or were you taking your time?
I was on a hustle. I was not. Okay. I had fully written off. I wasn't going to see it. Whatever. It was just hustling through, and not. Aspen's talking about winding his way through the stand. I was, shortest distance between two lines. Is straight ahead, and it was within 2 steps of being into that sort of leaf litter, being into that stand, and then you're out of it almost as soon as quickly. But it was just like boom, boom, just I can't even highlight how, despite it perfectly matching the background, it stood out immediately and instantly, both as a snake and as that snake.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you learned your lesson with the last hog nose, right? He didn't pass by. Well, yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Well, I was going to say that Aspen learned his lesson, learned the lesson of what hog nose will do eventually here. So we started taking some pictures, trying to work through it, and this was actually very accommodating compared to Easterns. My experience with Easterns, but eventually it had reached enough, and I told him, Aspen, go ahead.
So we were just, like Rob said, moving around, kind of posing it up for shots. And I wanted to put it back on the leaf litter and kind of get a leaf litter shot. Rob said, just so you know. I'm like, my lifer Eastern never feigned on me. Huh. It was totally a gate force, and everything never died. The moment we went to pick it up and move it, it had enough, and it started writhing, flips upside down and squeezes, opens the mouth. And I'm like, that's all right. I'll flip it back over. And Rob's like, no, that's, it's going to be a
good
minute.
Luck with that.
Which by this moment, like Rob said, we had already got plenty of good shots. I was pretty happy with it. So we started to step back. Rob suggested we probably better hang out for a second. Its belly glows white, and it could be a big target for a bird. So we hung back and watched it for Rob, maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Right. And in this time where, it certainly was at least genuinely 5 minutes, but it feels like 10 to 15, right? Where you're just like, and the patience of these things, but again, putting themselves at risk. So we moved it back, certainly back into shade, kind of undercover. And then it was like, but it was still perceiving us when we were within even 8 feet or so. So it was like, okay, let's get on the other side of this tree and we'll stand here and watch it and wait till it turns over.
You'd see him slowly start to peek his head up and kind of give the eyeball. Is anybody around me? And once he was pretty well satisfied, he just flipped over.
Nice.
Like a little burger patty.
Did he just sit there again or take off, or what was the
we pretty much left him.
Oh, okay.
We just said, okay, you do your thing, whatever that looks like. Functionally, it was exactly where we had started.
Right.
Yeah, so it was all
cool.
good.
That's awesome. Oh, how exciting. Yeah, I saw that picture and I'm like, yep, I knew I was going to be jealous about something on that trip. That's definitely a nice looking snake. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're gorgeous, cool. Yeah, as I say, kind of between the Western and Easterns. In my experience, again, didn't necessarily align. Aspen just had a super accommodating Eastern because ours was very willing to die and took a long. I mean, man, it was really putting me through my paces to get those pictures of the one that we found in Jersey, but or Eric found in Jersey. But whereas the Westerns, for the most part, they might puff their throat at you and stuff. And certainly this one was doing that too. I think even by the end, it took a few swipes, Yeah. So before it died, it took
like the cobra
sort of thing.
Cobra move.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, it went through the whole deal. It was good.
Did that encourage you that stuff was out now and you should continue looking, or was it like, okay, we found a target, time to do something else?
Well, it was even hotter at that point. Like it had just sort of continually gotten hotter. In the shade there, it felt okay, and that was, when we were hanging out with it and stuff, we were in that dappled to shade. But at that point, it was like, I think we're pretty done. So, it feels pretty done. So we were not close to the vehicle. And it was probably solidly at least a mile and a half, 2 miles
I'd say
to get back there. Didn't see anything during that context, even, again, being in habitat and whatever. Yeah. And we did cruise it out, saw further nothing, stopping for the same things again. And we had a plan, we wanted to go back to try and find cruise canes and stuff. And it seems like this time of year, especially, maybe they're running earlier. So it was like, it wasn't you're quitting. It was, no, we're transitioning to this next thing.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yep. Yeah. I did forget to mention, I did have one coach whip while we were in there. I did get a coach whip, and I called Rob because he stood still for me. And I said, Rob, I've got a coach whip. Do you want to come see him before I try and catch him? And I sent him a little pin, and he's like, I am way too far away to make it to you. Yeah. So I made my attempt and quite spectacularly failed, as
most people usually.
As was the common theme on this trip.
Right.
We tried a couple of times and never got them in hand.
Coach whips are just fast and smart.
They are good at what they
know
do.
how to evade.
Yeah.
They're good at that. Oh, cool.
Coach whips and racers, right? Yeah. And I think maybe you'd seen racers that morning too, which again felt positive relative to seeing snakes. But yeah, it was just kind of okay. Well, there's a different feeling, right, between a hognose and a pine snake or something like that, and a black racer. So
right,
yeah. So we went and tried to cruise some more, same place as the night before, looking for a cane break. Found a long waffled rat snake, a weird, bizarre sort of just snake skeleton from something that would have been 2 foot long or whatever, but no skin and all that. It was very strange. And cruise, then there's some dirt around there that I wanted to check out, so that was good. It looked super promising. One spot got a bit dodgy. It turned into, hey, let's reverse out of here.
Yeah.
And, kind of correct course.
Don't get stuck. Yeah.
Don't get stuck. Exactly. I suppose that's a funny thing too. One of those tires, I don't know if it was, you guys were talking about saying, oh, maybe it was the tire stem or whatever, but just to add that much additional layer of excitement to the trip, one of those tires started losing air. Had a slow leak, which and we didn't see anything obviously wrong with the tires, so I do think it was more like the tire stem or somehow something like installation error or something like that. And but the recommended PSI on those back tires was very high to be running on these sand reds and things. Which became even more interesting later. But
was it the first night of cruising for canes or the second night that we saw the quote-unquote corn snake?
That was the second, yeah.
That's what I thought. So I had been driving.
Yeah.
We did you'd switch out so nobody got too overkilled on driving. And it was my turn to start cruising. And we had gone down one of these side roads that run through this cane habitat. And I saw an orange blob. In my mind, I wrote it off. That's not a snake.
We'd been talking, and kind of distracted. We
were distracted.
Like, I'm looking
too.
at him instead of looking forward,
looking at the road. Yeah.
And as I kind of half swerved to miss it, just in case, it happened of road cruising.
Yeah.
Rob goes, stop, snake. And so I light the brakes up. Of course, you're doing 25, 30 miles an hour on these sand roads. So we skid a couple of feet. Yeah. Rob throws the door open and jumps out. And I'm like, I hope I didn't just kill it. In my mind, I saw the orange. I'm like, that's a corn snake.
Yeah.
And I'd been looking at him, and I had just looked back at what must have been in sort of that same instant processing moment or whatever. And it wasn't even certainty that it was a snake. Beyond saying it did certainly have the color of a really beautiful orange corn snake. Yeah. And so that was what was sort of in my mind.
Right.
And so I hop out. Yeah, we both hop out. He stops the car. We both hop out. And we're looking and thinking it ran which way or the other. And we're coming back thinking, oh, we missed it. And I'm like, this seems unlike, right, it's not a black racer. It's not a coach whip. And we're walking back, and right by the rear tire, just immediately, wouldn't have hit it, just immediately to the right, is this soft palmetto frond that very clearly was what we
Oh no. So probably the refocus, the swerve, and the color all worked in your minds to say
a beautiful storm.
Snake. Yeah.
Yeah, to say, oh, it's absolutely a beautiful 3.5 foot corn snake.
Right.
And whereas if just focused forward, not talking whatever, time on task, you just be like, yep, not a snake.
Yeah. Gotta love those. Yeah.
That was good. That was one of the more extreme, and committed to the bit.
Right.
Non-snakes that I've had. Yeah. Usually, almost always it's not going to be a snake, but that's 99 out of 100, 999 out of 1,000, fit into that box. This one, man, I really thought it was a snake.
He sold me on it. I had already written it off, and he had me sold it was a snake. So,
that's good.
Yeah,
I love those stories.
Oh, yeah. No, after that, I think we kind of not too long after that wrote that night off. I think we kind of decided canes aren't top of the list. They're probably not active right now. We're not seeing anything else on the road. Let's go back.
Dead ones.
Yeah, not seeing dead ones, anything like that. So we decided, hey, let's not kill ourselves on day 2. Let's go back to the Airbnb, get some rest, and hit it hard the next day. Because the next day we were changing locations and moving back a little further down south for new targets.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Which are drum roll, please.
Yeah, we were looking for short-tail snakes. We're very high on both of our list.
Right.
Pine snakes, indigos, if you could ever believe they exist. Those were kind of all the big top. And corals, Eastern Diamondbacks, and corals. Yeah,
nice.
For the most part, you have the same thing, both of those places, but sort of where we had moved to, there are no Simus. So that was was kind of the thing, as I was working through it the day before was, hey, we could come back here in the morning and route through this way, giving us one last shot had we not seen it. But, as I'd seen on the previous trip, you reach that point where it's like, if you're abandoning this place, you're abandoning that target for sure. Yep. The rest of the stuff is, for the most part, in both places. But, yeah, the Simus... that's
Uh-oh.
What's going on?
Little technical difficulties. We lost Rob. He is frozen. Well, maybe you can take. Oh,
yeah. I can take this over from here for the most part. So this again was another area that I had previously herped, as well as you guys. You may know this area is where you guys got that pine snake.
Oh, okay.
So
I wasn't there, but they got.
Oh, I thought you were there. Oh,
no, I missed that one. Yeah,
where they
for
got
better or worse. Yeah.
So we kind of started out doing a little bit of cruising. We weren't quite sure if we were going to still meet up with our local friend or not, KJ. Okay. It was kind of still up in the air, but we thought, let's start out and get to it. And I think he reached out to us pretty early on and said, "Hey, yeah, I'm coming to you guys, and I've got something for you."
Oh wow, okay.
And I'll go ahead and leave that to Rob. Oh no, sorry, yeah. I skipped a bit, didn't I? I skipped a whole bit.
Yeah. So on the front end of that, we had we'd gotten down there, kind of got situated, and I was familiar with. As you say, it was in the area that we had seen the pine snake in 23, which is a little bit atypical for that exact sort of precise area. And it was like, hey, we'll cruise a little bit and then let's hike it out. And in doing so, we had gone, we're hiking in that area, and Aspen had turned.
Oh no, it's happening again.
Uh-oh. Yeah, just when he starts to get into the good stuff, right? Okay.
All right. Well, I guess I'll pick up until he comes back. I totally spaced over this whole bit. So we had stopped to hike around a bit, specifically where his white whale had got away, where he lost his coral snake. Mm-hmm. So that I had coral snakes on the brain, which I love to find. They're the coolest snakes in the world.
Yeah, and you've seen a Florida coral, right?
Yeah, I've got all 3 U.S. corals.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you've seen them all.
So we're hiking this area, kind of split up, looking around. We've seen the fence lizards. We're seeing skinks, which I take skinks as a good sign, being coral food. Right. And we're walking along, flipping logs, just everything I can do to look for them. And this, by the way, is the really ticky area. Mm-hmm. So we're already kind of noticing 1 or 2 on our pants. And we're hiking along, and I see a good log to flip, very similar to the pygmy previous. I spot this log, and I walk over, and I put my hand on it. I flip the log, nothing under it. I lower it down, and I look 4 feet in front of me, and there is this gorgeous eastern diamondback rattlesnake just ambushed up. It looked like she was probably out digesting a meal. She had a little bit of a bolus left.
Nice.
Right up against another log.
That's awesome.
Perfectly sunning herself.
Yeah.
So Rob had already kind of wandered off a little bit. So I hollered back to him. He's like, "What do you got?" Like, "It's a big eastern." Starts marching his way back. "Marco, pull." You know how it is when you're dealing with that scrub oak that's, head high. You can't see anything. You could be 10 feet away and not know where you're at. So we came over. I think this is Rob's only his 2nd live one.
Yeah.
So he was rightfully so. He was.
Stoked.
He was, as Nipper might say, fizzing. He was very excited to see this snake. He was fizzing. Yes, he was
very
fizzing.
Cool.
And I'm always excited. That was my 4th one, and it wasn't the biggest one. She was probably 3 foot. Yeah. But she was a very good looking snake. Yeah. So we spent quite a bit of time photographing her. We never bothered her. She stayed perfectly still. I think she twitched her head once when I tried to walk in front of her to get a different angle. And Rob was, of course, laying in the leaves photographing her. And about 2 minutes after laying in the leaves, he mentions up to me, which I'm behind him. He goes, "I already have a tick on both hands." They had immediately inundated him while he was laying down, just swarmed him.
Oh, no.
After this spot, I was brushing him off of me. He was picking them off of him.
Oh, no.
Yeah, at one point we had joined up with KJ, and I was driving, and I could see him in the rearview mirror just picking them off and throwing them out the window. I'm like, "Oh, God."
Just be glad he wasn't in the seat in front of you.
I remember the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. So, but really cool, really, really nice looking snake.
Very cool.
We're pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, now we have an echo.
Oh, no.
Yeah, hold on.
Gained a co-host and an echo. All right. Welcome back. Oh, there you go.
Goodbye.
Maybe not. All right. So that's sweet. I'm glad you guys got an Eastern so quick into your 3rd day, right?
Yeah. That's third awesome. Day in and hiked up. I don't think a lot of, I could be wrong. I don't herp out there nearly enough, but I don't think a lot of people hike them up. I think for the most part, they get road cruise, and that could be because the Floridians like their road cruising. Yeah. Or it could just be that they're much more cryptic and spend a lot of time in burrows or real deep thickets.
Right.
And you don't see them often. So.
Yeah. Yep. They've got that pattern for a reason, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's exciting. A little better shape, but maybe not as tough an area to live in as the islands.
Yeah, a little more water.
As compared to with Rob's life or Eastern. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the other part of it, Aspen, did you mention that? So you'd found it, right? Come over, take a look, and all this stuff, and it's posted up beautifully. Yeah. And get the cell phone shot to show that context, because for the most part, when we're taking these pictures, we're so close that, or it either feels contrived, right, with sort of the way that it's set up if you're getting sort of the panoramic situation, but you still don't have the sort of as found, what did it look like to you seeing it context. You get the little cell phone shot. And I'm crouching over this log, and within, 10 or 15 seconds, I have ticks going on both of my hands.
Yeah. He mentioned the tick issue.
Yeah, they just instantly, it was like, oh, we're in a very ticky area. I don't think I was even seated, and yet I must have touched. And you got ticks on both ends going. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was quite a few in that area.
Fortunately, at this point, I've been through my immersive therapy in fine parents with these things. So
you're loathing or itchiness. What the ickiness is kind of gone its
way. The problem is once you find one, they're everywhere. Right. You feel every little tickle, and you're like brushing and scratching, going, "Oh God, that. Where are they?"
Yeah, immersion therapy. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
Yeah, so you go through it, and then it's like, okay, it's not actually that bad. I mean, it's a lot, but Whereas, coming from a standpoint where we really just don't see those and interact with those on sort of any sort of scale.
Thank goodness.
Right, because it's just a whole nother level of deal. And obviously, the permethrin made a big difference because Aspen wasn't, despite having a couple, wasn't finding it the way that I did.
Yeah.
It was. Long pants didn't solve the problem. It's all the. Well, I've been
the chemicals.
Well, I have been converted to the long pant ideology that only does so much, and I mean, it probably helps. I'm not doubting that it helps, but they're still on you and around you. It's just then you got to see them, kick them off that way.
Right.
And it didn't seem like the chiggers were there, so I have to assume the chiggers was mostly Simus related, and the ticks was mostly Diamondback and later, but in that kind of those two habitats, one seemed to be chiggers and the other was ticks.
Okay. So Diamondback check.
Diamondback check, which is awesome.
And was KJ with you at this time, or you hadn't met up with him?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Just pre-KJ. All right.
Pre-KJ. But so he had, he was like, hey, let's come back to this spot, right? And, he said, "Oh, I got something for you." Takes us over to this spot, and unfortunately, what he had got had remained there because it was DOR extenuata, the short tail.
Yeah.
So he was confident, right, that he could leave it there. It wasn't going to walk away on us, and so took us over to that spot and. Said, hey, check this thing out. And it was like, well, as soon as we're going back to that spot, that it's not going to be that, it's not all that good of news. Cause obviously, he would have called us to him. And if it was something he thought was going to crawl away, So,
and just for the listener, I admittedly I had to look this up, but it's Lamprepeltis. It's a king snake, short-tailed snake is what they're called, but related to king snakes.
Ish, right? That's sort of where it sits right now.
That's where it's at.
They are quite different physiologically and things. And I know, so they previously have been categorized differently and things. They're probably, certainly in terms of their function and how they sit, they're more similar to a subterranean snake, a tantilla, something like that in terms of functionality. But so we got to see that, and that was sort of, it was promising in the sense of, hey, these are up and about and doing stuff, right? Yeah. Which again is, hey, that's good. Take that.
Oh, and it's a hood tick. You got your hood tick.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Exactly right.
I'm counting this.
Sorry, Jason.
So I forget then. Did we? So that was the Diamondback. We had then gone out and
I think we started cruising.
Yeah. And there was a bunch of, like, it all feels good, but there was not all that much going. So did we see anything there before we went to the water?
No, I think that was the last that we saw there.
Yeah. So then we had gone back and hiked around, or no, that was the next day, right? Yeah. So we cruised around for a while. And this is where, I talked about this when we were talking about Florida before. And you're just cruising these dirt roads, as Nipper put it, it's tough on the pile, so it takes it out of you. There's a lot of distracting things and sort of you're feeling every bump and it's tough. So, ultimately it was, hey, let's go get an easy win, try and see some Nerodia on water and do all that. And, in sort of prototype Florida fashion, what we found was, sociopaths doing, amoral things where they're trying to run over, deliberately chasing raccoons in their trucks, and they're trying to, burn out and do all this stuff. And I'm just
yelling obscenities from the road.
At strangers about nothing. And it's like
in Florida, Florida fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the scariest thing in Florida is people. For sure. Absolutely true. Yeah. And we saw that the next night, where it was like we wound up. I had Aspen was driving again, and I was like, "Dude, you got to take this road. Let's get out of here, and we'll circle back through or whatever." And because there were just random headlights, and I'm like, "I'm absolutely not being out here with whoever this is. I'm just not."
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was. We did see you guys. I don't know, Aspen. You guys were a little bit ahead of me. So the funny bit was. Getting down to the water here, there was these irregular rocks where when you stepped on them, half of them, but only half of them, would rotate and try and break your ankle. Or don't get in the water with the gators, that sort of thing. They all look the same, but only half of them will roll when you step on them. So I was taking a little bit slow. You guys were, you had busted through, but I guess either Aspen, you or KJ had gone down at least once. So then when I went down, subsequently, I didn't feel so bad. And with the big old backpack, it was just an easy, soft landing, no worries. So all good. But yeah, we saw one green water snake, my lifer green water snake. Looked like it had maybe had a run-in with a car previously. It was a little bit wonky, but I mean, they're tough critters too. So it savagely bit itself. Yeah. I was able to keep it from biting me. So there's blood on it in the picture, but and that didn't seem to bother it none. It did sit up nicely under the, we did the collapsible bucket, and it sat there, and that calmed it down, and it did well with that. So that was good to see. It wasn't a stegonotus that wouldn't go under the bucket. Didn't have to fight it for 10 minutes. It was very accommodating.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, it was a good night on the water. I told Rob I get very distracted when I get close to water because not only am I hurt, I'm a fisherman.
Musk turtle.
I yanked a musk turtle out of the water.
Oh, cool.
I found a yabby. I still haven't keyed them out. They're the coolest crawfish I've ever seen with these massive, 8-inch little thin pincer claws. And
cool.
I was having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that seemed to be the only snake out and about around the water, which is bizarre for Florida.
Yeah, right.
You would expect more Nerodia to be out, but just the one.
Huh.
Just the one. We saw some gators, which fulfilled.
We did get the gators.
That fulfilled Aspen's inclination that every time he comes to Florida has to see a gator.
I refuse to go home without seeing one in Florida.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
So that ended day 3, right?
Day 3, yep. Day 3 ended, went back and rested up for day 4, which
was kind of rinse and repeat, or at least that was the ideation.
Yeah.
Ideation on it. And so what? We had come that morning, we're going around, and again, kind of conditions seemed promising, and we just weren't seeing anything. And of course, as Justin, you'll know this all too well from our Texas ventures and things, where it's like, there's a in places where there's a surfer to choice, right? It's you make a choice, and then you kind of have to stick with it. And then we get this feedback. Did you see this person driving around? And it was like, well, they found a short tail, or whatever, this sort of deal. And it's on X instead of where you were, it's gone like, you can't get sucked into it. It's good to know, kind of go.
It's encouraging.
Yeah. They're on the move. Yeah. And you were in the right place. If you find a dead one, they're there and they're out.
As I get teased often for saying, we know they're here.
Yeah.
And along those same lines, I think it was a day after we left the first area that we were in. We got word as well. Oh, by the way, so-and-so pulled a pine snake from that exact area, right where you parked at. We're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it works. You just got to try and spend the time there and do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all you can do when you're herping. Just put yourself in the right place and put in the miles and hope you get lucky.
For the best. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, But
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Rob said, it was kind of a rinse and repeat day. We stopped at the same place we did the first day in this area with KJ. Thought, well, let's hike this area again. Let's try and find that eastern again for KJ and see if we can turn anything up. And I think we found a few dead turtles, and that was about it. Just some old turtle shells.
Yeah, it's weird. It seems like and we had seen it in October where we had seen a soft shell that was like, I don't know, had to be easily a mile from the nearest obvious standing body of water, and it was actually one of them melanistic ones, right? Which was really cool to see. But yeah, it was odd to see an aquatic turtle where we're looking at it going, I don't know what body of water you have come from or are intending to go to, right? You're just on the road or whatever. And in the same vein with this, it was, I think they just get, I don't know if they get turned around, if they get stuck out, if they get sort of interrupted or, interact with something, whatever it might be. But I'd actually, Aspen, those chicken turtles, we had seen a couple of those at a different place much further south on my last trip where you just find that same deal. The kind of crazy one you had found was the one where it was like the mummified, still the skull was intact. It was very odd.
That's cool.
It was flipped upside down like something flipped it around trying to eat it, but everything was still there.
Yeah, very strange.
Crazy.
So yeah, that area was kind of a bust, and then we went back to cruising, which we saw outside of that one coach whip. Oh no, we saw
a couple of racers.
We saw a couple of racers. And we saw a coach whip, we saw two coach whips, I think. The first one got me really excited because it was like a big 4-foot snake.
The one that looks like an indigo.
Yeah, you see a big black snake crossing the road.
Right.
You start getting excited, and then it turns and just blows off the road. And it's like, well, that wasn't an indigo. We know what that was.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, and Rob was driving at this point, we had come up, and you could see him start crossing the road as we're pulling up to him. And at the same time, you can see KJ coming down the road towards us. And this coach whip's coming out, and Rob slows down right as it turns around, and I jump out like, I'm going to get this snake. I'm not going to let this. I need to catch one of these coach whips. And he busts into a thicket, and I start to surround the area like, okay, he's in here, and I'm not seeing him, and I hear some rustling, and I look up, and about 6 feet in the air, he is shooting up a tree. Which apparently is super common for coach whips. I've now decided I've just never seen it because St. George doesn't have trees. But he flew up this tree, and he was probably up there a good 15, 20 feet maybe, and he was not coming down.
Wow. And he was staring right at us.
He knew what he was doing.
Camera, right? Where, same thing, Justin, it'd be the same thing with yours or whatever, where it's like, got it right on him, and he's staring right at me.
Yep. So we wrote him off.
Yeah. You didn't climb up there? Come on, Aspen.
I thought about it, but every branch that Rob pulled on snapped. So just like a twig.
Right.
Yeah.
Not the best idea.
No.
Didn't seem promising, and it just seemed like that much likelier. Oh, you get within whatever that distance is, where it loses that comfort. It was just going to go higher, and ultimately, you were definitely going to be at a point where you were going to lose.
That's fun. Yeah. Cool.
So we kept cruising and turned up. Finally got a good one on the road there, and got probably a young of last year Eastern Diamondback. Beautiful. Nice. in that area. They have these really faded tails, and it was doing the total pancake job where it's cool. Flattened against the road and all that. It was very comfortable sitting there. So we even got some photos in that sort of prototype context that you see. Nice. And called KJ, said, hey, dude, obviously he sees plenty of them, but they are, I think he said, his favorite thing to find. So, unfortunately we have service. Their service is pretty spotty, but was able to call him and say, hey, come down. And so that was really, really cool.
Nice.
And then he was heading out after we'd taking a few photos. Aspen walks through the forest with some giant log, and that was pretty good. And some moss and all this. He's going to set up his little scene and all that. And, I think taken in its right context, you can make it work, where it's like, okay, if I just sort of, so that was really cool. And I appreciate the effort. Certainly. I mean, how much that log weigh? That had to be 35, 40 pounds.
It wasn't too bad. It was pretty rotted out. So it was fairly light, but it was the smallest one I could find.
Yeah. The smallest, he says the smallest one. I mean, the thing had to be a foot in diameter and 4.5, 5 feet long.
Yeah. And I don't think my shots even turned out to what I wanted. So,
oh shoot,
you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was good. He had to head out, had to go to work the next day and all. So we were like, well, we'll do some more runs. We were staying right up that way, so that was really good.
Cool.
And that was, the ideation. No, that's the advantage, right? Of when you're going back to a spot as opposed to booking it the first time. It was like, I saw this place and was like, that's the place. That'll make make our lives super easy on this stuff.
Nice.
Even though they might lack creature comforts in one way or another, it was like, no, that's the place. The advantage of being that close.
Right.
So
as long as you have a bed, right? Bed and a shower. It doesn't matter much else.
Well, it turns out when you're covered in ticks, it's also useful to be able to immediately throw your clothes into a washer. So I guess
that's true.
When in that context, that's even more important than I had sort of thought about.
Apologies to all the Airbnbs and airlines that we flew with and stayed in. What happens after we leave is not on us.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
That's why you pay the cleaning fee.
Yeah, we were trying our best. I think we did okay with it, but it was kind of, we're frantically searching, and the Wi-Fi isn't working and all that stuff. So there were, but again, the absence of a washer when you've been heavy ticked turns out is a big thing. So, but anyway, so it was just the two of us, and we're going to cruise it as we're getting into golden hour, into dusk, into dark, and we were running through on this spot, and we go through an intersection, and I just sort of happened to look to the right, and maybe 20, 25, 30 feet down the road on the other road that we had just passed through, I was pretty confident it was a snake. And then, I'll give it to Aspen for a bit, for his perspective, right? Because we always kind of lose it.
I'd happen to be driving, and I think both of us at this point had made an effort to look down intersections. In my mind, I always expect to see a snake off to my side as I'm driving past it. Right. Well, we drive, and it's like Rob said, it's just about sunsetting, and Rob goes, stop. And I like slam on the brakes, and I look down the intersection, and sure enough, you can see a snake, like Rob said, way down the road, just going off the edge into the grass. And so Rob throws the door open, jumps out, and just books it over to this thing. I imagine he knew more than I knew at that point. So I throw the Titanic into reverse, trying to, luckily there's a massive grass pull off in this area. So
nice.
I pull off and get over there. And as I'm parking the truck, I hear Rob yelling, hook, give me a hook. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this isn't a corn snake. And I grab the hook and come running over, and there is Rob's lifer coral snake.
Oh, nice.
Well, lifer photo anyway, right?
Oh, that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
I had seen that 3-foot monster, or at least, I can own that I saw it. Everyone else is like, well, no snake, no picture, whatever, it is what it is. But
pictures or it didn't happen.
So in this context, certainly it was the lifer picture.
Nice.
And it was probably half the size of the one that I'd seen before. That other one was absolutely
giant.
An absolute unit, whereas this one is probably a foot and a half.
Yeah,
maybe a foot.
It was a decent sized snake,
and maybe half to 2/3 of an inch thick, something like that. But it wasn't the 3-foot king snake size one that I had seen before, which was good because it made it a little bit easier. Aspen had more confidence than I did. He was going all Justin for it, for me, and giving it a go, helping me out, get it under the bucket. And it actually responded well to the bucket, save for the fact that in sort of prototype fashion, it would try and hide its head in the same way that we had dealt with, either hide its head or into we put it on some sort of matted grass to sort of
right.
we're talking about with
try
the pull
to go
out,
under
and
it.
it's going under and whatever. But there wound up being a couple that super happy with, really good precision on it and stuff. So yeah, that was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about the coral snakes is their little tail curl and flick. They're, they eat this, don't eat my head. And every single one I've seen does it. They curl just the end of their tail, and then they just wave it around.
Yeah.
And when they're, half to 3/4 to 7/8 of the way under the bucket, they're just leaving that out, flailing it around.
Yep.
Yeah. That's funny. Very cool. That's nice. You got it to sit still for some pictures, and you didn't have to risk a bite from a monster. Glad you got vindicated and got your photos. So now it happened.
Now it happened.
And it was all Rob's spot.
Yeah.
I would have never seen that snake.
Right.
Well, it's just the fortune of being on that side versus the other side or whatever, and how it works out. So no, I thought that was felt really good about that. Was super happy about that. I had an idea in my mind to let's go check out this other spot, and you kind of get into it. Well, I don't know, Aspen, if you had made mention of the fact that in the Titanic, at one point that same day, we're trying to go from point A to point B, and Justin, you'll both remember, appreciate, and understand my concern as I was like, okay, so we wind up on this very loose sand. Yeah. To the point where, and KJ says to me, "Oh, well, I'd be carrying more momentum into this if I were you." And it's like, well, I have zero experience driving in this stuff, so sure, I'm doing the best that I can. How about you do it? And it winds up sort of stalling out, in this spot, and I'm like. He fortunately, saw the opportunity, saw the need, met the need, and said, "Let's just switch," and so we did. But he's used to driving his Tacoma, right? Not the Titanic. And man, I became very confused. Oh, this is no worries or whatever. And you remember what happened to Eric's car when we went with Mike Curtin? Yeah, where you got all this bramble shit right on the road, and it's thwacking you and all this stuff.
Thank goodness you got the coverage.
Where you're just going like
little pinstripe.
Fortunately, this thing has mirrors so huge that we got the windows down, so they're sort of, it's buffering it or whatever, and all, and it actually looked fine. It came out of it surprisingly fine, but there were definitely some gut-wrenching moments on my end where I'm sitting there going like, is it better to go back, but you have to reverse. There's absolutely no alternative, it's forward or back, and you're going to be running back through it. So,
reminds me of our trip up north above Alice Springs in that Bird Sanctuary.
Yes, the undergrowth. The sea of grass and spinifex.
It just kept.
This was tighter.
More ridiculous.
This was tighter than that.
Really?
Wow. Oh yeah, this was more of an ATV track.
Tighter than that. yeah.
Or I know the feeling. Maybe the difference is it was tighter relative to what we were driving than what you guys were driving on that track. Yeah.
For sure.
At some point KJ just goes like, "Oh yeah, well it feels fine in the Tacoma." And I'm like, This isn't ideal. Let's try not to do this. So fortunately, we got through that, no issues at all, and whatever. But there was some tense moments, for sure, associated with that. And in prototype fashion, hadn't turned up anything. So it was just sort of what you would expect, right? And that became the other part of it too. Is even if we did see something as we're going through there, I mean, you can't even get out.
Get it right? Yeah.
And so Aspen and I, after the coral snake had kind of gone down the road, and we're seeing that same. It was like, man, I don't think we came this way because we're, this is like this, and we'd gone the other way or whatever previously. So we're probably 5 to 10 minutes into that, and then we turn around and we come out, and on the far left of the road, right? So, opposite of where we had been and all these things, there's a live but dying corn snake that had been hit, which would be my life or corn snake. And which was, I guess foretold in the fact that, again, because my sort of the way my trips have worked out, been super fortunate to see all these high value targets, right? Or the unlikely
the difficult
targets,
to find,
but not seeing the normals where it's like, I think at this point I probably have to be one of one in terms of, on the ignominious list of saying, I found multiple diamondbacks, multiple corals, a Florida pine, a Simus, and haven't seen a yellow rat snake or a corn snake or, whatever. I have seen a rough green. I've seen black racers, but, none of the East Coast Pantherophis at all.
Right. So, hey, if you find yourself in that same category, reach out to Rob and let him know he's not alone. I don't think you're going to be hearing from many people, though. That's a pretty unique list.
So just, and obviously reflects, right, that we're targeting specific things and whatever, and something about it. As I say, I rubbed off on Aspen. At least we got the Simus, but we weren't turning up stuff like he normally does. So,
Huh.
Super bummer we missed
Rob overrode Aspen in the.
Yeah, he took away all of my luck. Every Florida trip I've had has been a very good spread, and all of a sudden I'm so used to finding all these small little bycatches, and now I've got nothing to show for it.
That should be that would be a good topic. Is it better to find a few rarities or many common species? So maybe down the road.
Absolutely. Cool. The topic, I know that more or less gets us through it. We had stayed in that same area, as I said, KJ had other obligations the next day or whatever. We cruised out in the morning, and to no effect. And then I had a work call I had to take and all that. So that was basically it. Save for the fact that in the afternoon, one of the coolest, parts of the trip was, and Aspen had sort of brought it to mind, right? Because when we had gone in October of 23, Ron St. Pierre had invited us over to his place, and then just sort of with the confluence of particular dates and circumstances right at the last minute, it was like, okay, well, it doesn't work because X, Y, or Z. And Aspen was, how did you even bring it up initially? Somehow,
I don't know.
I haven't considered it.
I don't know what I must have said, because I didn't mention, you might have mentioned he was not that far away or you knew him or something. And I might have said, oh, that'd be super cool. And you're like, well, let's just call him up and do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him maybe 2 days before and said, hey man, we're, flying out of Orlando, can we swing by, or we'll take you to get some lunch and stuff. So we wound up doing that, but we'd gone over there on the front end, met Heather.
Nice.
Saw all their stuff. I think the funny bit is and I guess this has happened to them before. So they're on acreage there, and they have all this flip stuff.
Yeah.
So they have all these beautiful, amazing animals, right? The only folks producing albino blue tongues, and they have all these combinations and all this stuff. Yeah. And here I am getting poison ivy, just sort of flipping through all of these boards and things.
I was pretty convinced we were going to eat your corn.
Right.
And they're saying, oh, well, we have them. They live in the garage and stuff. But it was really, couldn't speak more highly. They were awesome as always.
Yeah.
And showing us all different stuff and talking us through the adventures, misadventures associated with the various projects, the emeralds and all that. Showed us a couple. And when we first got there, right, it was sort of mid-afternoon, super hot, and you couldn't even see them. Like literally, and we're talking one of those. We're talking a 4 or 5 foot emerald, and it's in this cage, and there's obviously plants going, and it's over the water or whatever, and you couldn't see it. I don't know where it was.
Yeah.
And then we go take them to lunch and all, and we come back, and the actual interesting thing, one of the interesting things, right? So they have lizards, and lizards being even more reactive to conditions. Mm-hmm. The funny thing that I took from this is like, if you're keeping reptiles outdoors, it'll really give you insight into like when's a good time to go herping. Because when, as I say, it was super hot when we first got there, and most of them were hiding away. They had banana pectinata, the skinks, all this stuff is tucked away. There are brown anoles literally everywhere, some greens and whatever too, maybe.
The old reliables.
Mostly, the old reliables are everywhere. And, but we're looking at this banana pectinata cage, and all of a sudden there's randomly, at least obviously they know it's there, but there's this, giant blue tongue at the bottom of this banana pectinata cage, but it's sitting out like half basking. And it's like, well, this is probably a good sign now that the conditions are right. It's actually actively seeking that sun as opposed to just everything had been hiding away when we first gone. So, it was definitely instructive, and they're just awesome people. Salt of the earth, sweetest
very
folks
good people
that are going.
Couldn't be happier to meet them.
Yeah. Ron's awesome. Yeah, I haven't met Heather yet. I don't think. I don't think she was at the table when I saw him at Tinley last. But yeah, Ron's such a great guy.
Yeah. So that was awesome, and then we at some point, because you get caught up in it, it was like, oh shoot, we got to go. Although we wound up having more time because there's just this tiny little cell that was throwing lightning around, and I guess you can probably take off in that, but you can't load bags in it. So you wind up, we both wound up sitting. You sat for an hour and a half. I sat for
it was an hour and a half worth.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's a bummer when that happens, but what do you do?
Yeah, well, it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we made it back, and it was, I guess, the interesting thing for me and the thing we were ostensibly going to talk about. And so we've partially talked about this. I think we talked about it with Steven before, right? Where we had talked about herping solo versus, with a group of folks. This is sort of a similar question of saying herping with our sort of normal operative number is 4 or 5, total in the group, something like that. But now, 3, I guess between
2 and 3.
Between 2 and 3 on like a lot of, probably half the trips that I've done in the last year, 18 months, something like that. So,
well, now where Aspen went on the trip with the 5 or 6 of us in Australia, and then this one with 2 of you. What are
you
the
even had multiple vehicles? So that
What are some of
don't
the
do that. Yeah.
What are some of the, I guess, pros and cons that in your mind, Aspen, of small group versus large group?
I mean, I think the first one that comes to mind with a large group is you cover more ground, you have more eyeballs. Maybe not for cruising. Cruising is definitely going to be a detriment there, but just getting boots on the ground definitely gives you the upper hand, especially when you're looking for those obscure species that are maybe cryptic basking, or like when we're looking in such a massive area for such a small snake, every pair of eyes helps. Right.
Hey, wait, let's flip a coin just for Go ahead and call it, Aspen.
Heads.
Heads. It is heads. All right. Good job. Okay. So which side do you want? No. Yeah. I did think that, that is definitely a benefit, except in the fact or the case where somebody sees something and they can't restrain it or like it's a mulga, and you just tracked it down and, you don't want to risk grabbing it and trying to tail it or something when that
sounds familiar.
Deadly situation, so I guess, and then like in the case of having 2 vehicles, they road cruised a very nice Western brown, with the, orange body and the black head and all that. We would have loved to have seen that, but we missed it because we were going the other way, and we didn't realize they were going to do a full loop or whatever. So, those are kind of the downsides of large groups. Sometimes
it's better
you're
to have known that it was there and then you missed it, or it's just been a single car.
I've never known at all.
Never known. It was just, we didn't see anything, or we saw these things and that must have been the only things there were to see.
Right. Yep. Right. And, I think that can be mitigated a little bit by having better radios. The radios we had were okay, but it was like if you could see each other, then the radios worked, and if you couldn't see each other, then they didn't work.
Once you get around a corner,
yeah. And mine that I brought flat out just died and didn't work at all the whole trip, so I ended up just chucking them. So wasn't that great anyway. But maybe something like what Dustin had, the little more powerful, a little more professional, a little more expensive. Those might be the radios to have in those situations where you've got a number of people. But for the most part, I think we saw, most everything. But you did definitely miss out on a few things. Whereas, well, I guess you guys kind of split up a bit too. So if you're out of earshot and you're having to call each other on the phone and send.
Well, it's ideal if you have cell range. Once you don't have cell range, you're up shit's creek.
You got to stick together pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know. It's hard to plan if you're going to have cell reception or not, I remember driving around in the middle, it was out in, I guess, south of Catherine, and I'm chatting with my wife, and all of a sudden I road cruise a blackhead. It's like, hey, just a second, honey, I just found a black-headed python. It's kind of a fun thing to have that reception and be able to at least get in touch with somebody. But yeah.
I mean, and we'd seen that sort of the first spot we had been. Mm-hmm. Was, with the Simus, I was able to call him, was able to even send the picture. Yeah. It was not perfect reception, right? So that it decided to not send him the picture of what he was trying to come see, for a little bit of delay there. But,
just builds the excitement, right?
Yeah, it was good enough to do that. Well, he's like the excitement of either a compound fracture or a Simus, those are the options. Exciting either way. But, whereas the second spot, you're out of it. So that as actually right before, he had hiked up that Diamondback, I had sort of bolted off in one direction for, I don't know, just because it was like, well, let's get some action in here or whatever. And then I realized this is a mistake because I have both walkie-talkies in my backpack and we definitely don't have cell service. So like if he sees anything, which he turned up, beautifully, it's like, and so I was like, no, walk back, hope to heck that you can find him. And sure enough, we did. And then it was like, you got to be within 50 feet, something like that, and try and within be consistent with one another,
And we still played Marco Polo.
Yeah. Because that is frustrating when you, especially when you found something and you want the others to see it because it's a cool find, like the Willard eye that I found in and I was looking for you guys and looking and then yelling and nobody could hear me. And it was like, what do I do?
Right?
It's kind of a panic situation. Yeah,
exactly right. Or that the first coral that I found, very similar, same spot or whatever, where it was just like, if I had been able to get people to help me much sooner, had anything, be it a tool of any kind or whatever, would have made a big difference in terms of doing it myself. But it was like literally if instead it wound up being 10 or 15 minutes before there was anyone else. And at that point it was just like, well, it went into this bush. So I consciously have I haven't messed with it, trying to hope that it's just sitting there, but it wasn't, so.
Yeah. I guess that's the tricky part, right? Is being able to be in contact, if you don't have radios or cell phone
get the coverage, service, but be accessible too. Yeah.
You gotta be in earshot, something. Yeah. And that's hard because, you just get hiking and you get that excitement of the next find could be around the next bend or around the next tree stump. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, where'd everybody go? And you have no clue where you are, let alone everybody else. And you're kind of out there by yourself or something. That can be a little frustrating. And it is easy to get separated or to kind of spread out, a little further than you anticipated. And it's good to kind of have a plan and talk through it before you leave your car. Like, hey, let's stay within earshot and check in once in a while with each other. And I think, if you're finding stuff pretty often, like we did in Australia, there, and we did have the walkie-talkie, so we could see each other, see the lights, but also communicate, over distance. I don't know that we could have yelled what we found, that would have been a little harder, other than just going whoop, come find me, the come find me whoop. But other than that, it's a little tricky without the proper communication or tools or plan or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. What do you, it does have its advantages and disadvantages. If you're with the wrong person and there's only two of you, sometimes that can be a little, you can't switch up cars.
Right. Fortunately, that hasn't happened to me, across the, I've gone where it was just Phil and I, just Aspen and I, just Ellen and I. It is a different dynamic, and then even compared to, you say 2 or 3, there was the trip to Southern California where it wound up being Eric
and Brandon.
Valentine and myself, and it was like I saw different from Eric in the Southern California than the one you had seen, right? Where, usually he'll fade to the back, as it gets to night, and when it's a bigger group, you can see that, right? Where it's like, oh, well, those people are talking, but you can step away. When it's just two of you, like,
there's nowhere to go.
You're both sitting there, or neither of you are sitting there, basically, so you got to be invested. And when it's a match that works and you're both sort of kindred spirits on that and whatever, and it's cool. I think the answer is when it's good, it's great. And when if it goes sideways, maybe the trip goes short, or I don't even know what that turns into.
Let's just go our separate ways. But I think it can, and for the most part, I mean, you know who you want to herp with. You're not just inviting some random stranger to come herp with you, by yourself or something. But sometimes, you do that, and you go out with people you don't really know, or people contact you, hey, come out herping with us, and you go do it, and it's all right, or it's a little weird, or like I remember when I moved to Smithfield, there was this local guy that was into reptiles, and I was excited because somebody in my neighborhood was into reptiles, and so I met up with him, saw his collection, all this kind of stuff, and then he's like, hey, would you mind watching some snakes for me? I'm going away for a bit. And I'm like, sure. And then it turns out he was going to jail for soliciting a minor. And then I'm like, wait a second, I didn't realize this is where you were going, and this was the reason. I don't know that I want to be necessarily watching your snakes for you while you're gone. So probably
going away to school,
exactly. So that was a little strange, but I guess for the most part, who you're inviting on your trips, and you're not,
no, I mean, I don't know. I guess a mixed bag, and I would say that it's great, can be great either way. Obviously, the downside is cost, right? So that one of the best things when we have 4 or 5 people, and we got the singular car, right? Obviously, you get into sort of a multiplication problem if you have 2 different cars and all these things, which might be more comfortable, but you don't have that same functionality. Especially if on the front end you book it, hey, we'll have 7 people or whatever, and then it winds up being 2. Fortunately, I've learned that lesson and have won't set it to be paying for on Airbnb and things. You can have it where, like, if you book the same place and you say that you're going to be 2 people, that's a different rate than 3 versus 4 versus 5. And but not every place is like that. Some of them it's X, regardless of if it's the one of you or 7 of you. It's going to be the same price. Others are variably priced. So ideally, if it's a variably priced situation, ideally you get the appropriate booking, or you book that right. But
and you and I both well know when you're planning a trip and you have it in your mind, this is going to be 5, 6 people, and then it turns out to be 1 or 2, and you're like, oh well, that changes things.
This is going to hurt.
And the people that you booked accommodations because they would probably prefer to sleep in a bed rather than in a tent, and then and then they bail on you, and you're like, well, now I've booked these reservations and I don't even want them, and now they're going to be twice as much.
Doing X, Y, or Z.
No, it can be frustrating when you're the trip planner, especially. So, you and I know that pain all too well.
Absolutely, absolutely, we do. So, I mean, I think that's sort of the couple natural constraints, but as long as it's someone that you can, I mean, it's one of those, you're in it, so you just got to sort of have the right mindset,
whether or
bring
not
in positivity, and I think that makes all the difference in the world too, is trying to say, like, hey, at least are we, getting that out of it, getting the enjoyment of being out in space and enjoying what we're doing.
Right. Speaking of which, if anybody's looking to hire a professional field herper, please let me know, because I would like to go on all of Rob's trips and not worry about work or money. That's the trick sometimes, is doing all the things you want to do and having versus having to pick and choose what you can do and what you can afford to do, or what you have time off of work to do. It can be a trick. That was this trip. I wish I could have gone, but it just wasn't in the cards.
The list of trips never gets smaller. It only gets bigger.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, the other hard part, right, is you reach a point with some of the stuff where it's like, and I'd seen it with West Texas before. Well, I guess all the ones that winds up being two people. It's like I just know from my perspective, I'm so thankful that there is that one person, because otherwise I don't know that I would do it by myself, right? Just particularly in Florida, holy shit, with but saying, hey, I'm just glad to be able to go and do it, and it's gonna wind up being more expensive and whatever than it otherwise would be, but it's, hey, at least I'm going, because if Aspen wasn't going, if Owen wasn't going, these sort of things, well, then I'm not. If Phil wasn't going to West Texas, then I'm not going either. So it's like, it actually allows the trip to take place. So to me, that, I'm always thankful. And it's, just bringing what we're always trying to do, right, is bring our own sort of awareness of the grace that we receive, and say, like, heck, man, I got to be on my best behavior and super nice and super positive and all these things, no matter how it's going, because I'm only here because of the grace of this person, agreeing to come along. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've done a few solo ventures, and, with the trip after dropping you guys off the airport, I'm like, now it's just me, it's all on my shoulders. And, sometimes it's hard to keep going. Like if you're tired and you're bugged or you're injured or something,
no one's there to keep you awake.
Exactly. It's just like, well, I guess I'm sleeping, or I guess I'm getting a hotel because it's too blasted hot. And there were a few things that I'm kicking myself, because I was in the area and I had a spot where I was going to go check a rock face for an Oedura, and I spaced it off. Like I just forgot about that part of the plan, because I don't know, maybe I get a little more scatterbrained, or I'm not as focused when I'm not with other people, not
as accountable, right? It's just so helpful to have at least that one other person holding you accountable to the, hey, let's or just keep going, push through.
Exactly. It's a little harder to push through when it's just you sometimes, and like you said, the cost goes up, and the loneliness goes up, but at the same time, you have a lot more flexibility. You can do whatever you want. You can listen to whatever music or podcast you ever want, and you're not bothering somebody with some weird podcast you're listening to. So those kind of things, can be a benefit too, I guess. And you kind of get to know yourself and what your limits, or what you really, really are motivated to do, and things like that. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of pros and cons, I suppose. I think I do like the sociality of a large group, and herping with a bunch of friends, and I think those bonds get tighter. And sometimes if you miss out on a trip, you miss out on some of that,
for sure,
bond formation, whatever you want to call it. Like the and the inside jokes, or things like that are developed.
People who suffer together stay together.
Right. So, but at the same time, it's nice that you can develop a deeper relationship with certain people at times as well. So it's one thing to kind of know each other over the internet, and it's a whole different ball of wax to herp with each other. And sometimes you find out, like, maybe I'm okay just being a distant friend across the internet, and you find your bond has weakened a little with the herp trip. But not saying that's necessarily happened, but it's a possibility for sure. Pick and choose carefully. But
yeah.
Cool.
I do think the other, you'd hit it there, and I was just seeing it even in the moment with the Simus, right, is saying, like, to me, the added benefit of just at least being one other person, is, and I suppose when it's a great target like that, just the two is good. Sometimes it's fun when it's this whole big group. The excitement of all those people is like a multiplying factor on the enjoyment of the experience. Well, it was awesome to lay down and, just stare at the sinus, get bit by chiggers, have them go to town, stegosomes for days. Simultaneously, it's like, it's also fun to be sharing that experience with someone else, right? It's awesome to see it, but it's great to share it. And, if it's something that obviously meaningful, then one person is more than enough. If it's something that, hey, it's just super cool, to see it, the rough green snag. Well, someone within the group, that's going to be a passion item, so that like, oh, that's bringing up the overall enthusiasm when they come in, super stoked and ready to go.
Right. And that can almost detract, like if you're the only one excited about a find, like in my first trip over to the Darwin area, I kept stopping for every Ciliaris, that was crossing the road, and they're like, come on, dude, it's just another gecko. And I'm like, what else are we doing? What else? We're just driving around. Might as well stop and look at a gecko. Well, we're here for snakes. I'm like, well, not all of us are here for snakes. Like some of us like geckos too. But, they were excited for the first 20. I think it was those last 15 that just drove them nuts. But you know what I mean? Like if you don't share those passions, sometimes it's like you're really pumped about something and everybody's like, oh, cool. Can we go now? Like, right. Time's a ticking. Let's go find something cool. So, well,
and I think even, that reminds me of the first time we gone to Australia, we went, so it was Eric, Chris Salemi, and myself. And, Chris had just been there on the previous year as part of the grand venture with Nick and that crew as they had gone through. So that Eric and I it's our first time in Australia and first time in this area because it's first time and whatever. Whereas Chris is going like, I've already seen it, and that's not that's intrinsic. That's not to him. That's to that context of saying like Eric and I are going. Everything is new and everything is exciting. Invariably, it's not going to be as new and exciting if you were just here a year before, Sure. And that group dynamic can be weird too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've had that experience where I've been with people who have been like, I've been there, done that. I don't really need to get that excited or do much about it. And even I've been there 9 times. I still don't feel like been there, done that. Like I'm still thrilled about just about any find, even if it's something I've seen 35 times or whatever, hey, another Ciliaris, woo! I don't know. I guess that's, again, selecting the crew, knowing people that they get excited just like you do. Right. That's an important consideration. Because if you're always like, come on, let's go. Let's, enough time with this thing, and you're just like, come on,
I think it's had enough, Justin.
Yeah. our time is up with this animal. We've done our welcome. Versus, this is a real treat. We need to. We're excited about
this one. So all good. Absent pictures like we did for yours. I hope this is fun and interesting. Certainly, it was an awesome trip, and cool to. I was super happy with it.
Remind people where they can look for your pictures to see photos of your trip.
So they'll probably see Aspen sooner. I think maybe I'm getting onto that. I know maybe this is another fight topic at some point, but there's the question of, do you post stuff, how soon after you've seen it? What is that telling people? Obviously here we're talking about it, but
another
they're putting in the work to listen and all that, Yeah,
so, another group dynamic too, because like, if you're really excited, like for example, the Brettles python that we found, like we kind of all decided, okay, let's let Jordan post this first. He was the one that spotted it, like let's give him the first go.
Amazing photos.
Yeah. That too, definitely, Yeah. So I think that's kind of the, that's the, as long as everybody's kind of agreed, but sometimes you get people who are like, I just got my cell picture and I'll just shoot out everything. And, then it's kind of like, oh, well, that kind of takes away the
luster or whatever.
But at the same time, it's not like we overlap completely on the followers and stuff like that, and we're not posting it up necessarily to get likes or whatever for the most part, we're putting it up for us to remember and to us to be excited about and to have other herpers say, hey, that's
for the record.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I've been in both boats where, I've gotten scooped in quotation marks versus I've scooped others or whatever and got it out quickly. So, it just depends. Yeah. I guess that's another maybe discussion for the photography issue is, taking pictures with your cell phone. It's very easy to share those and to, get them to a point where you can just throw them up on the internet. Whereas if you're taking pictures with a camera, and unless you've got
all of mine are cell phone pictures of the back of my camera.
Right.
Well,
exactly. Those are the
to further, I think Rob shoots in JPEG, right? So you can transfer your photos right away. They're already processed and you can upload them, whereas I'm shooting in RAW. So not only do I have to wait till I get home to upload my photos to my computer, then I have to go through them and process each photo individually and add in the color and the detail that, otherwise would have already been added into it. So
and then downgrade it so you can
then bring it back to a JPEG. Yeah.
Then put it in a JPEG. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So it's different taste. So maybe it's easier to have alignment on that. Maybe another pro for a small group is it's easy. Less likely to have a rogue actor that's sort of doing stuff that maybe you're not loving or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So where can people see your pictures, Aspen?
I usually throw them up on my Instagram under Aspen Mahan Wildlife Photography or on Facebook as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've seen a couple come through where maybe that was just mostly in the group chat, but
I think I just sent I haven't posted anything from the Florida trip yet. I just barely started processing them before the show, so it'll be a minute.
Well, and what is when? Because by the time anybody's listening to this, maybe you've posted.
I still haven't touched the Australia photos. So
yeah, really, I've
gone through a few of them, but
that babbler shot
not the whole
awesome.
Trip. Thank
you. Eating the lizard in the tree, that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
fun stuff. All right, well. I guess that's we can maybe have some more discussion on the photography discussion down the road. We kind of dipped our toes a little bit in that, but we need some real photographers to battle that one out.
You might have to bring Jordan back on.
Yeah, exactly. He was a little like, "Hey man, what happened there? You have two phoners discussing photography? Come on." So, yeah, we'll definitely revisit that topic, but. All right. Well, good discussion. Good recap. That sounds like a great trip. I'm glad you had some really nice finds and some good lifers and some good confirmation of lifers. And
absolutely.
Yeah. I still need one for Catalineatus monitor, the striped tail monitor. I didn't get a picture of that thing, and both Heidi and I saw it. So at least she can confirm that I saw it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks to Eric and Owen and the MPR umbrella, and we'll catch you again next time for Reptile Fight Club.